you are working in NTPC, which is National Thermal Power Corporation.
Yes, sir.
There's a recent move by the European country CEC to introduce a carbon tax on the other country. What is carbon tax? Not yet finalized. They have proposed. Countries like India are opposing. What is carbon tax?
So, carbon tax acts as it's a financial instrument which acts as a disincentive, so that for emitting greenhouse gases. So instead of emitting greenhouse gases, companies can transition into more greener technologies.
What are the greenhouse gases emitted?
Mostly carbon dioxide, then methane, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, then PFCs, perfluorocarbons, hydrofluorocarbons, and SF6.
Okay. Sulfur dioxide is also greenhouse gas?
Sir, no, sir. Sulfur dioxide
No,
is
it's not there. Okay.
Yes.
Fine. But what? Why do they want to do it? This is done by European countries only. Why?
Sir, if we compare the temperature rise from pre-industrial levels, so temperature is rising faster. So we need to limit it below 2 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. So that's why every country in the world is striving to limit it, sir. And greenhouse gases play an important role in increasing the temperature. So if you are able to curb those emission of gases, then we can at least control the increase in temperature. Global warming can be controlled.
Then it is good, no? Why does India oppose it?
Regarding that carbon tax, sir, so it will increase the it will make our exports uncompetitive, sir, in the short run. So that is why India was opposing. But again, it would be a chance so that our companies can transition into more greener technology.
So it is good, no? That why undeveloping countries are opposing them?
Sir, developed countries initially they emitted all the. So now they have finance, technology, and everything. But India had to transition to that stage, and we have limited capital and technology also. So that's why we wanted like common but differentiated responsibilities. So a developed country should play a more role compared to developed countries, and that's what India and many developed countries are vouching for. Sir.
You have made a good point, but what is you made an excellent point? Common but differential. What does it mean?
So climate change is common to everyone because it affects on the whole globe, but common but differentiated responsibilities. So each country, depending upon their status, whether they are developed or developing or least developed, have differentiated responsibility. So a country like USA or European nations have more responsibility because they have attained already a developed status and they have access to finance technology. So they need to play a better role and they need to provide finance and technology to other countries. Other countries.
Very good. I've got a good idea. Okay, but what is likely to be the percentage of this?
Can you repeat it, sir? Percentage?
What is the percentage which they would likely to levy, which will make it uncompetitive?
Percentage?
Of carbon tax. Which is the likely percentage?
Percentage, if I need to give a number, I would say 10 or 15, 10 to 15%. Sir.
Okay, it is likely to be between 15 to 20%. So it will become uncompetitive. Good, you have got a good idea. We'll come back to you again. Sripati sir, will you take up? Sripati sir, you can ask. Whoever is ready, Sripati or Major, Air Marshal. Okay. Are you able to hear?
Yeah, we can hear. Mr. Sripati, I think you can take on. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Sripati, you are not able to hear?
A little poor.
Now you unmuted.
Okay.
Can you hear me? I had muted, now I unmuted. Can you hear me?
I
I
will
can
do
hear.
perfectly.
Perfectly all right. Yeah, Prabhu,
Yes, sir.
now can you tell me what is the meaning of this word, Prabhu?
So, Prabhu implies emperor, prince, or even they refer to God, like Lord Murugan, Lord Krishna, and Lord stands for Prabhu. Then that is the meaning.
So, is it Prabhu or Prabho?
Prabhu.
Prabhu, is it? So when you address, let us say God, how do you call it? Prabhu or Prabho?
When we address God, we say Prabhu.
Prabho. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Now, which place you are from? I'm not able to read your.
Native is Tirunelveli, sir. Presently staying in Chennai.
You are only in Chennai.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Now I have got it. Just one moment. Okay. Yeah, I got it. Okay. Now you are in Chennai, Paravantangal. Okay. This Paravantangal has a history.
Sir,
Yeah. Can you just tell me why it is called Paravantangal?
sir, it was ruled by Pallavan dynasty, sir. So Pallavan Tangal can be separated as Pallavan plus Tangal. So Tangal in the sense that's the area around a tank. So that areas are called Tangal. So that's why it is called. It was Pallavan Tangal. Then slowly it changed into Pallavan Tangal.
Okay. Very recently something happened. Recently, maybe about 20 years, 15 years. Again, Paravantangal. There is an agitation also. How long have you been in Paravantangal?
7 years, sir.
Oh, 7 years. Then maybe you are not aware of it. There was an agitation to rename the station. Something else. They wanted this to be named as Paravantangal, and there was some agitations. I mean, railway station was introduced, this and that. So you better get to know. Maybe somebody who knows about this place can ask you. Yeah, I'm just guiding you. Okay.
I will look into it.
Yeah, just look into that. Then you said Tirunelveli.
Yes, sir.
Tirunelveli.
Yes,
Tirunelveli, can you quote somebody, a very eminent person, persons, there are any number, whom you would say is one of the greatest?
sir, can you repeat it? Sir, your voice is breaking.
Okay, that is, Tirunelveli is known for several things: history, okay,
Yes, sir.
religion. Okay, now can you name a personality from Tirunelveli whom, according to you, there are several, according to you, is one of the greatest? Maybe you can say you turned the history towards India.
I would say V.O. Chidambaram, sir.
V.O. Chidambaranath. Chidambaranath, is it?
Chidambaram Pillai.
Chidambaranath Pillai. Okay. Okay. What did he do? Why do you say that he is one of the greatest?
Sir,
Yeah.
he was a freedom fighter, social reformer, sir. And the most important contribution was, I would say, he started the Swadeshi steam navigation company. So there was this British steam navigation company which was traversing between Tuticorin and Colombo. It was a monopolized business, and Indians were facing huge.
Are you sure it was between
So
Tuticorin and
Vivo Chidambaram start. Yes, sir, sure, sir. So he gathered funds steam navigation company against small odds. In the end, the company was liquidated by British. He lost it, but showed that power and age can do anything.
But why do you
So in a
say,
way, he put the
okay, why do you say he's one of the greatest? There are any number like Vanchi, isn't it? Vanchinathan.
yes.
He also did a major thing which is unheard of those days, isn't it? Why only?
Vanchinathan, yes, sir, definitely. So he killed a collector Ash in
Yeah.
station, but I chose VOC because he made a consistent effort. And not only in this, next there were some strikes by coral factory laborers. Then he fought for those people. He went to jail. He was incarcerated and he went to jail. He was made to do manual labor, huge manual labor. Then again he became a lawyer. He still contributed to the freedom struggle in whatever capacity it was possible. So he made a consistent effort all through his life compared to others.
Okay. Now, there is some memorabilia of Vauci, isn't it? In memory of Vauci. What is that? It's still there.
Tuticorin Port is named as Vivo Chidambaram Port.
Something in memory. Naming, okay, leave it. That I'm not much interested. Something which he had used or he was made to use. That is still there somewhere. Can you remember? Can you identify? Why did he become very famous?
This cold press, he was made to pull the oil press. Is that
That's what is still there. It's a memento. It is still there as a memorabilia. It is very much there. So, check Shemmal, yeah?
yes, Checkil. He was
Shemmal. So, that Adaimuri, check Shemmal, that is most important. Naming, you name anybody, any place, any street, this and that. That doesn't mean that he is an eminent person, isn't it?
okay.
Okay. On the literary side, can you tell somebody?
So, I couldn't think of, but Bharatiyar, I would say Bharatiyar.
What do you say? I couldn't think of. If you are from Tamil Nadu, if you think you cannot think of Bharatiyar, then I don't know what else to say. On the literary side is Bharatiyar. He was one of the. Yeah, go ahead. Tell.
So again, he was a poet, sir. Initially, he had he started writing poems in Tamil. Then he had a chance to go to Varanasi. From there, he learnt many languages like Hindi, Sanskrit, and he was able to translate works from that language to Tamil and Tamil to other languages. His songs were more fierce, and it was able to attract the masses. Like one song, Achamille, Achamille, fear no one. So like that, he was able to attract a huge number of people through his songs, and he was able to give a sense of how a freedom would look like. So in that way, he was able to attract the masses.
Can you say any literary work which how Chidambaram has done? He was merely a freedom fighter. Has he done any literary contribution? Following from what Sri Sripati ji has said.
Literary, I couldn't think of as of now, sir.
There's nothing to think about it. Either you know or you don't know. The thing is, I'll tell you, after his permission to practice as a lawyer, advocate was removed, taken away by the British government. So he was running a shop, a provision shop. He wrote the interplicate. He wrote the commentaries on ancient Tamil works, easy Tamil line, Sangam works and all those things. You know about it. Okay. Then, Sripati ji, you can continue.
Yeah. See, on that Bharatiyar, I get the impression that you are mentioning him as also ran type of a poet. But what Bharati did was much more than what he just sang. He was again one of the greatest freedom fighters. Okay, on the one hand, VOC. Okay, he was very rich, but still got into a mess because he was a freedom fighter. Bharatiyar, he was very rich in his poetry, oratory, everything, but not money-wise. Got into a mess because of freedom fighting. Bharatiyar shifted to Pondicherry. He was in disguise. See, these are all people whom you should be like that. In a jiffy, you must be able to say.
Okay.
See, one thing you must understand. In an interview, you lead the interview board. Okay. Suppose somebody asks you about Bharatiyar, you must lead the whole interview board to Bharatiyar only. You are thorough with that. You can get quite a high mark. But if you start, maybe I can think of this and that, you show diffidence. Don't be a diffident person. Confidence is what is called for. Resourceful, being resourceful. Okay. Yeah, for the time being, I'll stop here. Mr. Ramon, you can ask the other person to continue.
Okay. Air Marshal, you want to ask?
Thank you, Dr. Ramon. Okay. Okay, Prabhu, first is you've done electrical engineering, am I right? BTech electrical engineering.
Yes, sir.
And so for how many years have you been working with the NTPC?
9 years, sir.
9 years, okay. But so right from the beginning, you've also been attempting to join the civil service. This is your ninth attempt, is it? Or you've already done 9 attempts?
Uh,
Yes? I can't hear you. Nothing.
No, sir.
You've done 9 attempts, am I right?
Can you? Yes, sir.
Okay. Why is it? I mean, you're an IIT graduate, and an engineering education gives you the fine ability of analysis and looking at problem solving capabilities are supposed to be the hallmark of engineers, particularly, and from an institution like IIT, you've come out. So the world is actually quite open to you. And why have you chosen to attempt for the civil services? What was the motivation for that?
So my motivation would be civil services provides a larger platforms compared to electrical engineering. No doubt it's a good field, but this promotes a larger platform for public services, and there are greater domain, wider diversity of service. So I felt that my career will go along with the nation's developments,
Okay, but as an
be
engineer,
more useful compared to electrical engineering.
you feel the electrical engineering contribution will be lesser if you're a high-end professional as you develop further.
Again, if suppose if there are specific fields where I can use my engineering knowledge, but being apart from that, engineering gives an attitude how to solve a problem, the approach, how do you approach a problem, what are the issues. So in that ways engineering knowledge will be helpful for me, because
Okay.
yes.
Okay, you've also chosen your subject as geography, and so what are your what is so unique about the subcontinent, India, in the context of geography?
So, I would say first climate, sir. It has a monsoon type of climate, so
Can
compared
you,
to sorry, sir.
what is monsoon type of climate?
So, sir, our rainfall is concentrated in only around 3 or 4 months in a year.
Hmm.
So most of the rainfall is being in those 4 months, and we need to take suitable action so that for rest of the months we are able to manage the water resources.
That is true of most of the countries of the world. No? What Air
Sir,
Marshal asked, what is specific about Indian climate, Indian geography?
Okay, let
sir,
me put it a little more clearly. Okay, for example, there are some India is endowed with certain very strong geographical strengths. In the context of water resources, rivers, soil, and a whole lot of others. And that probably you will be able to link that also to, the concentration of populations and of course the growth of, population, etc. Now, what is the size of India today? I mean, the subcontinent is divided into now multiple countries, but just take India alone, and the size of India as compared to geographical size of China, what is the ratio?
size of India it's around 3 times smaller, sir, compared to
Times
geographical.
smaller. Okay, right. Population is same. So
Yes,
the
sir.
density and concentration is much more in India, right?
Yes, sir.
Correct. What is the factors that drive to that kind of development? What about have you seen a property called the arable land in India, and
Yes, sir.
how endowed is India with arable land as compared to, let's say, China, or even the US is about 3 times bigger than India as well. So what is the strength?
So our arable land is near about 50-55% of our area.
It's more than 60. Yeah, it's about. It
We
used
have
to be
around
at
some
one point of
160,
time
170 million.
70, 80,
Yes.
it's come down to 60. Okay, right. And how is it? Is it more than what China has?
Arable land, sir.
Yeah,
Yes, it's more than what China has.
right. In terms of world ranking, where are we?
We are number one.
We are second, next to the US.
Okay.
Right, which means a major portion of India's land is rich, arable. One of the contributing factors to population concentration and population growth as well. Right, that is one of the elements. So, if India wants to enhance its capabilities in terms of food security, food production, exports of food, etc., we've done well now over the years, and we are significant producers of vegetables and fruits, exporters of food now from a stage in 60s and 70s when we were looking forward to the PL 480. We've come a long way. Nevertheless, we can do efficiency wise, in terms of productivity wise, we can do far better. Right? China, with just 20-25% of their land mass as arable land, produces more food than what we do. Right? So, what is the most important, weaknesses in Indian agriculture, particularly with respect to the geography? Water management, or is it farm holdings or farm policies? You've seen the recent agitations on farm policies. So, what
Yes,
would
sir.
you actually figure out as the major weaknesses?
Sir, I would say our agriculture is mostly paddy dominant, sir. Paddy and wheat dominant, and paddy consumes more water. So that is one of the main reasons. And in addition to it, I would also say productivity is less compared to other countries. Our country's agriculture productivity is less. If you compare countries like Brazil, China, their productivity per hectares are more compared to what we are able to
Why is
produce.
that?
So,
So, you need to
sir,
actually look at it. If you want to, you're aspiring to be a civil servant who will deal with making out policies with respect to, better management and efficacious management, right?
yes,
So, why is the productivity less? Our population is high, as I mentioned earlier. So, there is something called marginal farm holdings. Majority, 80% of our farm holdings are marginal holdings.
yes, sir.
Therefore, it contributes to poor modernization and inefficient exploitation. Right? There is something that probably will need to be looked at carefully. And countries that have actually overcome some of these problems have different policies. There's an example as a policy in the UK, you're not allowed to divide land holdings in a family. But Indian culture is that if there are two sons or three sons,
Oh,
the property will get divided, and therefore your land holdings tend to get fractured into smaller holdings. The smaller land holdings that you
okay.
have has a problem. One of the ways of how countries like, let's say, while developing countries like the communist countries or even Israel have overcome some of these problems is through commune farming as well. And that means join up cooperative farming, join up more together, and then, get better efficiency and bring in better modernization, etc. So when you actually look at these issues, you must look at it from a policy angle on how to maximize,
Okay.
eliminate weaknesses and maximize productivity is one issue. But on the geography, there is also another aspect that you need to look at. Have you heard the term geopolitics?
Yes, sir.
So when I asked you the first question, what is so important about Indian geography, the first thing that should strike you is the geopolitical
Situation.
location of India, and what are the important characteristics that you would look at?
Nuclear
In
neighbors.
the entire world, I think I would consider Indian subcontinent as the most famously located in terms of geopolitical advantages. And if you go through history as well, we are in the center of the known world, from Mediterranean to the Pacific. And therefore, that is also one of the contributing factors how Indian civilization spread across. And we were a major maritime trading nation as well, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
the shape of India with juts into the Indian Ocean gives a commanding presence over the Indian Ocean. And the Indian Ocean, somebody said about Indian Ocean, almost 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago. Have you heard of the name called Admiral Mahan?
Yes, he proposed a theory as well regarding Air Force, Mahan's theory on Air Force,
On?
on air superiority, sir.
Mahan is a naval officer, so obviously not. And he propounded that in the 1890s and early 1900s. So the air power was not even there that time. Okay, so he spoke about the British Empire and the secrets of the British Empire and how it controlled the Indian Ocean. Indian Ocean is also characterized by choke points. You've heard of Malacca Straits,
Yes, sir.
correct? You heard of Persian Gulf, the Suez
Hormuz
Canal,
Straits.
correct? These are all
Yes,
choke points, correct? There are 7 choke points that are there. And geography plays an important role in being able to understand the significance of these areas. If India wants to command or India wants to influence and spread its power visibly in its natural area of influence, as it calls, from Suez Canal to Gulf of Aden to the Malacca Straits, right? You need to understand geography extremely well,
Okay, sir.
correct?
Yes, sir.
So, what would you, in terms of subcontinental geography, do you think what's happening in Afghanistan is going to impact us significantly now?
Sir, it may not impact us now, sir, in the immediate, but definitely it's a concern in the medium term as well as long term, sir.
What kind of a concern?
So we have already made several investments first. We have created dams, parliament buildings, and lots of assets there. So those things will be in danger. And we have our personnel also even working there on various projects. So our Indian assets there will be threatened. Then it may even serve as a launchpad for terrorists against India.
These are all very obvious what you read in the papers and that come out. What is the geopolitical ramifications of what's happening in Afghanistan? From a geography, you need to look at it from that angle.
So
There is a
our
Pakistan that
connectivity into
between India and Afghanistan, and we've tried to overcome that in the last
yes.
20 years, thanks to, you've heard of the term Northern Alliance, who came in 2001, and then, of
Yes,
course, eliminated Taliban. And Taliban, as a kind of these kind of groups, cannot survive without an external sanctuary, and the sanctuary is Pakistan. And therefore, the world hasn't dealt with Pakistan effectively. And until such time, the Taliban was under control and not able to, come inside Afghanistan effectively. The NATO forces were there, the US were there, and the others played a role. So Afghanistan, we are trying to get Afghanistan back on its feet as a viable state, right? Now
Yes,
that
sir.
they're all withdrawing and those external forces are going away, India is handicapped by geography because we don't have a common border with Afghanistan. We have, of course, technically, but that's in Pakistan occupied Kashmir.
Yes.
And therefore, we need to depend on multiple strategies to overcome geographical constraints to retain our influence in Afghanistan. Right? So you need to actually look at it from those angles. The amount of money that we spend and infrastructure that we created and our people working there are short-term issues. The long-term issues is what matters as to what kind of an influence and power we can exercise over or have in Afghanistan, and then as a gateway to Central Asia further, right? And what will Pakistan do and what will Taliban do in the context of Indian interests,
Okay, sir.
right? This is what, so when you get into so don't, when you actually say that geography is my preferred choice of subjects, you need to then open it out completely
Sure.
and study that, right?
Okay. Okay.
There are some fine books written by some of the authors like Kaplan, R.D. Kaplan, correct, on the monsoons, Indian Ocean, Revenge of Geography, right? Read that. You'll get
Okay,
a good understanding of it.
sure, sir.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Ram.
Indra, could you take it?
Yes, okay. Can you hear me, Mr. Prabhu?
Yes, sir, I can hear you, sir.
Okay. Now, as an aspiring civil servant, I wanted to ask you, what do you consider 3 of India's greatest achievements after independence? Any 3?
One is creation of Bangladesh, sir.
Creation of Bangladesh.
Yes.
Okay.
Then I would say LPG reforms.
LPG reform.
Yes, sir.
Meaning what?
Now, how it increased our growth rate and GDP and also.
No. What is the expansion of LPG?
Liberalization, privatization, globalization. The 1981 economic reforms.
I see. Okay. And the third?
And third, I would say the present scenario, sir. How we are tackling COVID-19 and how we serve as a model for other countries to emulate. Because initially we were not affected and we were exporting vaccines, and then now we were affected. Then now second wave came and we were able to control it. So our Indian model can be emulated by others also.
So, in your opinion, these are three of the greatest achievements since 1947.
Yes, sir.
Is that your view? Can you hear me? Mr. Prabhu, can you hear me, please?
I do hear you. Prabhu,
I
are not
don't
here.
Yes, sir,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
Yes. So, in your opinion, these are the three, some of the three greatest achievements after independence. Now, how is the creation of Bangladesh such a great thing? Took place as far later as 1971, isn't it? 71, 72. So, what about the years between 47 and 71? Nothing great took place there, is it? According to you?
Yes, sir. No, it's even during that period we had in fact we built our foundations. So we built our heavy industries. We tried to increase our agriculture reforms were taken, but all the more beyond that, this question of East Pakistan was already brooding, because there were anyway it was a security issue, and Pakistan was trying to control it. So even if we didn't give if we didn't liberate, at some point of time it would have caused much more issues. So we stepped in, we liberated them. Otherwise, it would have caused a migrant exodus also, and that would have put us in more harm's way.
I'm a little puzzled because when you started off just about a minute ago, you mentioned the foundations that had been laid. You are referring to the foundations laid soon after we became independent in 1947?
And I'm telling about this second plans, second 5-year plans, where we built our heavy industries and so on.
All right, fine. But don't you think it is because we laid such solid foundations that we were able to take on Pakistan and liberate what used to be East Pakistan, help create Bangladesh? But for all the work done between 1947 and 71, would we have been able to make such a great impact on liberating a huge portion of land and helping them get independence?
Yes, those were, I would say, those were building blocks. So
Yes.
Building
so without building blocks, how do you have a superstructure? All right. The second point you mentioned, what was it? LPG. I thought it was liquefied petroleum gas, but you're talking about something else. Please tell me about our achievements in that area. What does LPG stand for again?
Liberalization, privatization, globalization.
All right. Please tell me a little bit about each of these, our achievements in each of these areas.
So liberalization, our country had only certain sectors were, I mean, most of the sectors were reserved for governments. So after liberalization, except very few sectors like atomic energy, railways, and defense, aerospace, the rest all sectors were open to private sector. So procedures were simplified so that people can start more industries. So that is liberalization. And as far as privatization goes, efficient industries with public sector, they were privatized, and more disinvestment was done compared to previous years. So private industries were encouraged. That is privatization. And as far as globalization is concerned,
1 minute before globalization, you mentioned two things. You were talking about liberalization. You were talking about privatization, and you were talking about disinvestment.
Yes.
Is there a difference between the two, or are they the same?
The difference in privatization, we give management control too.
Hmm.
In,
All right.
in disinvestment, it's not necessary because we can disinvest a part of the share, but still we can retain management control.
Okay, can you give me examples of privatization and of disinvestment separately?
Privatization, Maruti was privatized. Sir. Maruti initially was with government,
Okay.
and now it's a private entity. And as far as disinvestment, say a public sector company like Indian Oil Corporation, its shares have been disinvested, but majority share belongs with government and it is under government control.
All right. So, do you think is there any need to continue with the ownership by government of many of these industries, for example, the petroleum industry and so forth? What purpose is served? Shouldn't we just privatize them or at least disinvest? What is your feeling?
Sir, they serve as market intervention forces, sir, because especially in strategic sectors like oil, they help the government to control the market in certain times. For instance, even during COVID, Air India was used extensively, and even if you take the case of power sector, we still have a long way to go. Our per capita consumption of electricity is very less, and state corporations can play a major role in furthering that. So I think in strategic sectors we should have a certain presence in public sectors.
One interruption. You mentioned about oil sector.
Yes, sir.
That will help the control. But now we see the petroleum prices are skyrocketing, even though government is supposed to have an invisible control over them. Why does it happen? Is it not contradictory?
So, prices are increasing due to increase in global markets. So prices are rallying there.
No, there is a informational error. The price of the crude oil has come down from $92 per barrel to $75 per barrel last week.
The transition will take some time, but major reason is government has kept the taxes high.
Okay,
And,
Devendra, you can continue.
Okay. The third point you mentioned was globalization. Tell me about that.
So, that is related to how we can integrate our economy with global economy. So previously, global firms were not allowed to invest here or start businesses here. But then India opened its doors, and now it is integrated. So we have foreign companies from other countries investing here, and our companies are investing there. We have global supply chains running all through the continents.
Okay, now you may remember that sometime back there was a feeling that many industries would move out of China and many of those would come and invest in India instead or set up shop in India. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, has it actually happened or not?
Still, not it happens, sir.
Not it happened. Why do you think it has not happened? In the first
Moving a
place,
company
was
from one
there
place
any
to another, I
exodus?
think it involves a lot of.
Pardon me?
What's sir? I didn't.
No,
I
kindly
didn't
repeat
get you.
your. No, kindly repeat your answer. I didn't catch it. Please repeat.
So can you repeat it, sir? Last sentence. I was not
All
able
right.
to get.
I will ask you again. Was there an exodus of industries and investments out of China to other countries? Did that actually take place?
Sir, not really to that extent where everybody thought of. Still, companies are operating in China.
Okay. And if any investments or industries migrated out of China, where did they go? Did they come to India or did they go somewhere else?
Sir, some companies have announced that they would set up their factories in India, but still they haven't. They haven't started their industries.
Okay. Now, if you had a substantial industry in China, for what reason would you like to leave China and come to India? You tell me that.
China was exercising more first the more control on the industries, sir, because still they have not adopted a market economy type system. So that was main reason, and especially during this COVID crisis, there were allegations that China was responsible for it, and countries they didn't have China didn't give a clear picture on that.
No, but
And
but tell me, despite all this, do you actually see industries and investments migrating out of China to other countries?
they have mentioned that they would migrate, sir, but if other countries' policies are more conducive, and yes, they would migrate.
No, the point is that no. So you're saying that this migration, which was expected to take place, did not take place. Am I correct?
Still have they have not take place tangibly. Maybe some
So
few very
now,
few.
so it is now over a year since COVID started, 1.5, maybe almost 2 years. If in these 2 years' time industries have not found it necessary to leave China and go elsewhere, why should they do it now?
Sir, if other countries can offer better facilities, and if the cost of production is less compared to China, then they may leave China.
Yes,
Sir.
but that is a universal formula. Industry will always migrate where conditions are easier, better, more effective, more profitable. Nothing new in that. It does not require COVID or something like that to have that happen. So the very fact that industries have not migrated out of China shows that China's policy has been successful. Would you agree?
It was successful, sir, but that's what, after COVID, there is a issue with those countries as well.
No, Mr. Prabhu, you tell me which are the industries you know that have migrated, or which are the companies you know that have left China because of COVID or for some other reason and have gone to some other countries or might be going to some other countries. Just name 2 or 3 if you can.
Apple was contemplating, sir, but still.
No, I'm not talking about contemplating. Which are the industries that have actually done it? Has Apple left?
No, Apple has not left.
Who has left then?
I couldn't think of it.
Okay, can you think of any industry that has moved out of China and come to India?
No, sir.
In that case, don't you think your theory is a little incorrect? Okay, forget about that. I wanted to ask you, just as you have mentioned 3 of the great achievements, in your opinion, of India after independence, can you also mention 2 or 3 cases of failure after independence in this country? What would you consider 3 of our greatest failures?
One is this how we were unable to take back Pakistan occupied Kashmir, sir. One is that.
Okay, then
progress in our health and education.
Okay.
We have made progress, but whether it is equitable or accessible, whether everybody is able to access health and education, that is one. And third would be living under poverty. Around 22% of our people are under poverty. We need more actions towards.
All right. Okay. Now, have you heard the term vaccine hesitancy?
Yes, sir.
What does it mean?
So people are hesitant to take vaccine. They give one or other reasons, saying that they don't want vaccine, and they don't take vaccine.
What are the reasons for not taking it?
Sir, some don't believe in efficacy of vaccine, and some feel that they would be harmed due to vaccine, and many have some have feeling that they don't require a vaccine, and they call it the entire COVID as a sham kind of thing.
Okay. Now let us assume. Let me give you a hypothetical situation. Let us assume you are a collector of a district in Tamil Nadu, and the government of Tamil Nadu writes to you and says that there is a very strong degree of vaccine hesitancy in your district. You will have to mount a campaign to get over it, and to ensure that everybody there who is eligible gets vaccinated? Roughly, what would you do? What kind of campaign would you plan?
So first, I would create camps
Camps.
at various places. Then, for instance, if my dose is due, I would take my dose there. So in front of people, I would take my dose there.
Hmm.
Then there are videos of our honorable Prime Minister, Chief Ministers getting vaccinated. So
Okay.
even that can be used as a campaign to bring more people. Then important community leaders, religious leaders in the area, they can be first convinced, and through their speeches and all, I would be able to attract more people. Because if
Right.
a person from their background and their region, if they are able to convince the people, then more people will come into vaccinate.
Nice. Okay. Thank you.
Vijaya?
Ramon, you can.
Yeah, Vijaya, you can take.
Yeah,
Vijaya? Yeah.
First, a personal question. You have made 9 attempts, and I do wish you all the very best in this attempt. Have you
Thank
been
you.
called for any interview during these 9 attempts?
No, ma'am, this is my first interview.
First interview. Do you feel where you could have gone wrong in not, because we are trying to help you in this. You must get through somehow this time, isn't it? Because apparently a graduate from IIT would look at other options. But you seem to be very bent on, your mind is bent on joining the service. It could be IAS or any other service. And I do hope that this time you will make it. Do you think there is any other way that you would like to brush up yourself before you go for this very all-important interview of your life?
You are
Competitive exam.
yes, ma'am.
Oh, and however well you may do in the interview or in the written exam, it's just the first thousands who are taken. And if you are not getting the IAS, are you willing to settle down for any other service? Or you want only the IAS?
Not necessarily.
5 attempts is something very strange. That's why I'm asking you. You may be asked this question in the interview board also.
The reason for giving more all the choices is that I'm comfortable with all those services, but my preference is towards IAS.
Okay. And if you get some other service, will you take it? Do think up of something logical, because this question could be asked.
Audio struck, ma'am.
Pardon?
Can you repeat it, ma'am? Your voice was correct.
Think about this, what I asked you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, do think about what I asked you. Because,
Okay.
9 attempts by a candidate, definitely it will attract some questions from the panelists.
Okay, ma'am.
Think about how you would like to answer the question. What you're saying is you will settle for the gold medal and not the silver medal, is it?
Yes, ma'am.
Talking of medals, have you been following the Olympics?
Not much, ma'am, but at least I've.
Indians have been doing very well. You're not interested in sports?
No, I followed the people, at least our Indian contingent.
Yeah, and who is the first Indian woman to win an Olympic gold medal?
Indian women, ma'am.
Yeah, the first woman to win an Olympic medal this year and previous also.
Indian.
I think we need to brush up because Olympics is on everybody's mind now.
Okay.
And some of our women have been doing very well in the Olympics. Brought credit. One lady has already brought silver medal.
One has got bronze medal.
Yeah, who else? Who is it?
Ma'am, can you repeat?
PV Sindhu.
No, I thought you were asking for a women's gold medal.
No, medal. I said medal.
Okay, medal. Okay, ma'am. Medal was Mirabai Chanu and PV Sindhu. Both have got.
Okay, and you still have hopes of the women's hockey team also doing well.
Yes, ma'am.
Now tell me, I'm quite intrigued by your hobbies, you know, your interest on plane, what is this plane spotting and rail fanning? Can you tell us something about that? What is plane spotting?
Ma'am, plane spotting in the sense it tracks the movement of aircrafts. So it can be done through apps or even through naked eye. So it's basically about seeing planes, photographing
No, but
collecting information about the planes and so on.
now how did you develop it as a hobby? Because you're basically a resident of, but you live in Chennai. So do
Yes,
you
ma'am.
actually see the planes and spot them, or you're able to make out the what are the aircraft's type? What exactly is it?
Ma'am, my home is situated near airport.
Okay.
So for past 7 or 8 years, I was able to witness various aircrafts,
Hmm.
and even from childhood, I had this interest towards planes. I used to watch this documentary on air crash investigations.
Hmm.
So through that, I was interested in flights. And when I moved to Chennai, my home was situated near airport, so I was able to get a good view of them and learned more about them.
So, but is this a hobby that is you developed it from, learned it from someone, or you just did it on your own?
No, I did it on my own, ma'am.
Okay. And what is this rail fanning?
Rail fanning, it's about interest in trains, ma'am. So similar to flights, I photograph trains, and
Hmm.
there are fellow rail enthusiasts. So we meet up there, and if there is any special occasion like a new train inauguration or an anniversary, then we meet up there and exchange pleasantries.
Have you looked at some of the heritage trains, the steam locos,
Yes, ma'am. In
mountain trains?
mountain, I have been on Nilgiri Mountain Railway,
Okay.
and as far as heritage trains, even Southern Railway ran this steam loco, some EAR 21. It was run as a heritage run from Egmore to Kodambakam.
Hmm. And what about the Fairy Queen? Have you traveled on any of them? Have you traveled anywhere on the Shimla line, Darjeeling hill station?
No, I haven't done those.
No, since you have
Yes,
mentioned,
sir.
pardon?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Hello. No,
Hello.
since you have mentioned
Only patient.
planning and the plane spotting as a specific hobby, I think you need to brush up a little more on this before you go for the interview. Because
Okay.
you will definitely be asked, because you have mentioned it in your data profile. So you will definitely be asked about it. I am not very happy with the answers you have given. Maybe the air marshal will say something about your plane spotting.
In fact, yes, I was also quite
Intrigue.
curious too, and I mean, I think I forgot to ask you on that. So, plane
Yeah.
watching or plane spotting is a plane recognition. Let's put it that way, is a fairly well-established hobby
Okay, sir.
all over the world. Okay, so there are people who are there who do that. But when you go into the Air Force from a military angle, plane recognition is an extremely important element. You know,
Yes.
today,
Yes.
of course, you have technology and the radars have come so far ahead that everything can get picked up. But in the earlier times, particularly for the army, they have to recognize between enemy aircraft and Indian aircraft in a battle situation. Otherwise, you'll end up shooting your own aircraft. Right. So these are all hobbies. But hobbies develop on the civilian side. Today, there are a lot of people who would, as a hobby, would want to recognize every aircraft that's up in the air. And then that develops further into understanding technologies between aircraft. You're an engineer, so the aerodynamic designs come in, the control systems come in. You know, these are all just from watching you develop into further understanding of what an aircraft is. But more importantly, today, on you sitting in any corner of the world, on Google, you can get enough information to be able to see how many aircraft flying in the world in any region, anywhere in the world. And you can actually track. I'm talking about civil traffic. All that information is available. So that is the kind of a hobby you are actually into, you can expand, but you need to, like Madam said, you need to answer these details in little more depth, because certainly people will ask this question.
And rail fanning also, your answer is not adequate about rail fanning. Let me tell you, there are a lot of rail enthusiasts. You know, you have a steam loco fan club. You need to read a little more about the heritage train. So be a little more prepared about it. When is your interview? When is your interview?
Ma'am, next week, ma'am.
Next week. So just read up.
11th August. Yes.
You're from, basically,
Okay.
your native is Tirunelveli, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
What is this Tirunelveli halwa made of?
Can you repeat it, ma'am? Your voice was breaking.
Tirunelveli halwa made of? What is it made of?
The world famous Tirunelveli halwa. What is it made of?
What is it
Wheat.
made of?
Wheat, ma'am.
Wheat how? Wheat means? Is it ground wheat or how is it made? I mean, some basic recipe you have, because it is, whoever goes to Tirunelveli or whoever comes from Tirunelveli, we say, get us some halwa. Tirunelveli is actually famous for a lot of other things, as Mr. Shripati asked. But somehow halwa is what remains in our mind.
He doesn't know. So,
The recipe, I have to look into it.
Acha,
The recipe,
interestingly, Vijaya, next candidate is also from Tirunelveli.
yes,
Probably
I know.
he would be knowing about it. You ask him. Okay, thank you for a beautiful thing.
Thank you, Prabhu. Wish you all the very best.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
Rudra, Dr. Sripati ji, you want to make any comments to the directive to the candidate?
I do want to give a few pointers to
Yeah.
Prabhu.
Yes,
Prabhu,
sir.
can you hear me, please?
I can hear you, sister.
Okay, now I found you lacking in depth. Okay, now when somebody asks you what are the three greatest achievements in your opinion of independent India, you cannot start off with creation of Bangladesh. Okay, don't you think democracy is the greatest thing in India these days?
Oh, yes, sir. I should have
What
started.
about the fact that we have progressed from a country that lived from ship to mouth to one which is exporting agricultural produce? What about the tremendous achievements in the scientific field? Okay, now these are the things you have to think of.
Okay,
And similarly, this LPG formula you mentioned, which I thought was liquefied petroleum gas. Now, there again, you need to have more in-depth knowledge of each of these components you have mentioned. Okay, and you should be able to talk about them with great force. That's important. And I
Okay.
was a little puzzled by your saying that we had set some kind of an example to the world, because COVID is nowhere near vanquished in India. See, it is not as though we can say that we are an example of how best to beat this disease. We have not reached that stage yet. We are proceeding slowly or trying to proceed slowly in that direction, but it will take time because of the nature of the virus. So you cannot say that because of that countries are thinking of migrating to India and so forth. And I was very disappointed by the fact that you are not really aware of the stark reality that unlike what was predicted, especially in India, nobody has left China for the purpose of coming to settle down in India or in any major way anywhere else. Okay. You are making very generalized remarks without any background to it. And you can easily tie yourself in knots because the interview board will keep asking you, probing to find out how deep your knowledge is or otherwise. You have to be prepared for all that. Okay.
Okay.
So think about these things and think in detail. Don't just read the headlines and draw conclusions from that. You have to read editorials and research publications and so forth. There are people writing every day in papers like the Hindu Express, etc. And a lot of what they say, commands one's attention because they are written from a position of deep understanding and knowledge and maturity. So please don't think that the interview board will be satisfied with some off-the-cuff remarks. You have to have more depth. Okay, that can be acquired. Okay. All the best.
Sripati ji, you want to tell something to advise him?
Yes, I have a couple of points to tell Mr. Prabhu. Now, to lack confidence, see the body language, if it is great, half the interview is won. Please take it that way. Okay. You look diffident. Don't look diffident. Look confident. See, no answer can be given in a perfect way. And the interview board does not expect you to know anything and everything. Okay. There are thousands of things which you will not know. But you have to have a knowledge that, as Mr. Gangadharan mentioned, in-depth knowledge of certain things at least. See, like
Okay, sir.
I asked you about Tirunelveli. You are from Tirunelveli. There are Tirunelveli from A to Z. Any number of personalities are there, things are there, isn't it? Tirunelveli, she asked, wonderful question. Yes, every one of us has eaten. You would have eaten. But if you think that you don't know the recipe of Tirunelveli halwa, then, well, you don't know anything about Tirunelveli, isn't it? See, and Bharat now he is being quoted all over the world. It is not as though only he is confined to Tamil poetry. He does not belong to one individual or one small group of people. So if you say that Bharatiya may be this and that, then it shows that yes, knowledge is a little poor. So, and Vavasi, and the important item, that is check,
Yes.
power tiller, power gunny, whatever it's called in your terminology, please read a little about these things
Okay, sir.
in depth. And as I said, you have to lead the interview board. Okay. If
Okay,
you
sir.
are very strong in something, let us say I asked about Tirunelveli, you go on Tirunelveli itself, the interview will be over in about half an hour. You would have succeeded. But you start fumbling, then every other question will just go on. Where you are confident, go ahead. Hammer and tongs. Okay. Wish you all the best.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, another only comment I want to make. You look very serious in the thing. Have to be smiling. Don't look very serious.
Okay, sir.
So you are relaxed. Nothing is going to happen. They are not going to court-martial you. They are only asking, testing your knowledge. Be smiling.
Sure.
Look happy. That is very important. You are looking
Okay.
very serious. Vijaya, you
Yeah.
want to say anything?
Wish you all the best, Mr. Prabhu. I
Thank
do
you, ma'am.
see, and I'm sure you will be bringing us Tirunelveli halwa after you get it.
How will you get from Delhi Tirunelveli Elva? You should go to Tirunelveli.
Bring it, okay?
Sure,
And
I will bring it, ma'am.
know the recipe, okay?
Yes,
Air
ma'am.
Marshal, you want to say something?
All the best, Prabhu. Wish you the best, and let's look forward to a great result.
Okay. You have got one.
You're an IIT engineer, right? That itself is a good brand value. So show that confidence
Okay, sir.
and take on
Okay.
the way it is.
Yes. The most important thing is self-confidence. Atmanirbhan. So you do that. Very important. You have got one more week. So if you got any doubt, you want to have anything which you slightly find it difficult to contemplate, you can contact me for other. We will be able to tell you. Take phone number from Desika. We will be able to help you.
Okay,
Okay.
sir. Sure, I will
Okay.
contact.
Bye. Best of
Thank
luck.
you.